There are a huge number of mountains in the world, and many of them have been climbed more than once. Even the highest peaks have been conquered, but some peaks still remain unconquered. One of them can be called mysterious and even mystical. This is Infinity, and in this episode I'll tell you why no one in the world can climb to the top of this mountain and show you the most dangerous mountains on the planet, which will amaze you. Let's go! Everyone knows that Everest is the highest mountain on Earth. Its height is 29,028 feet. But in spite of this, Everest has been conquered plenty of times. Mount Unconquered is significantly lower than Everest. Its height is 24,836 feet, but no one has conquered it yet. This mountain, located in Bhutan, is the highest unconquered peak in the world. What's interesting, just 100 years ago this mountain was not even on the maps. It was first described in 1922. The participants of the first cartographic expedition could not mysteriously notice the mountain. According to them, the mountain simply was not in its supposed location. No one would have believed this story if the exact same situation had not happened in 1983, when a group of mountaineers ventured on their first ascent. In fact, it was in 1983 that mountaineering was allowed in Bhutan, and the daredevils tried to conquer Unconquered. 4 expeditions were undertaken, but none of them reached the summit. Each time they were hampered by heavy snowfalls and poor conditions. In 1994, Bhutan banned climbing mountains over 19,685 feet high out of respect for the local faith. And in 2003, mountaineering was completely banned in the country. Since no one had ever climbed Unconquered before, the mountain will apparently remain unclimbed forever. But why wasn't the mountain conquered before 2003? Still, snowfall's not the worst thing that can happen when climbing. Bad conditions do not regularly prevent climbing Everest. So why do they prevent climbers from conquering Unconquered? Theorists believe that mysterious forces are involved. According to them, the mountain hides the base of several alien races inside. This hypothesis is supported by testimony of local residents about numerous visits to the peak by unidentified flying objects. Something similar is said about Mount Kailash. This is another mysterious and unconquered peak. It's located in Chinese Tibet, and it's the highest in the region. The height of Mount Kailash is just over 21,653 feet. It's hefty, but for a top climber, such a height is quite possible. However, no one has ever been to the top of the mountain. All the climbers who have attempted it have told that climbing Mount Kailash is hard to explain and very difficult. It's as if something or someone is preventing them from climbing up. Scientists have no explanation for this phenomenon, but locals believe that the reason is that Mount Kailash is the center of the universe and that the Hindu god Shiva resides at the top of the mountain. According to them, it's impossible to climb to the top because of the power of Shiva, which resonates in the mountain. Theorists and UFOologists agree with the locals and add that Mount Kailash may not be a mountain at all. If you look at Mount Kailash, you can see its pyramidal shape. The facets are oriented almost perfectly to the sides of the world, as in the case of the Egyptian pyramids. Theorists believe that Mount Kailash is a man-made structure left by an unknown civilization, or even aliens. Perhaps that's why no one has or will ever conquer the summit. What do you think? Are Mount Kailash and Unconquered really connected to unknown civilizations and aliens? Or is it unrealistic to conquer them for another reason? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned. Further, there's a compilation of the most dangerous mountains on the planet, which are dangerous to climb even for the world's toughest climbers. Annapurna. Annapurna is translated from Sanskrit as the giver of food and nourishment, although it would be more correct to call this mountain Hellish Peak or something like that. In general, it's not a separate mountain but a mountain range, the highest point of which is Mount Annapurna 1. It's this mountain which is often called the most dangerous on the planet. The mortality rate among climbers for all years of climbing here reaches 32%. In fact, 1 in 3 attempts at climbing is fatal. These figures are lower now, but just a few decades ago, almost every second climber was left permanently on the slopes of Annapurna. The main reason is avalanches. Here they're extremely unpredictable and very powerful. This is complemented by unstable weather and terrible terrain. One climber from America described this peak as a complete danger, completely covered with ice. Interestingly, despite this, it was Annapurna that became the first mountain with a height of more than 26,246 feet, where a person climbed for the first time. It was done by an expedition from France in 1950, consisting of 2 people. It took them 14 days to descend, and they suffered severe frostbite as a result. Everyone knows about Everest, but far fewer people know which mountain is the second highest in the world. It's K2, or Chogori. Its height is 28,261 feet. Chogori is also known as the Savage Mountain because it's considered almost the most difficult mountain in the world to climb. It's almost unreal to conquer this mountain in winter. For the first time, it was done only last January. Before that, not a single attempt to do it was successful. But even in summer, it's extremely difficult to conquer Chogori. Until 2018, about every 4th ascent ended tragically. That's because climbing this mountain is much harder than even the giant Everest. Despite this, many climbers strive to conquer this mountain. For some, climbing Chogori is an even cooler achievement than conquering Everest. And given the difficulty, this isn't surprising. Chogori is followed by Kangchenjunga, literally because it's the 3rd highest mountain in the world. More precisely, I'm talking about the peak called Kangchenjunga Main, or just Main, with a height of 28,169 feet. Like many of the highest mountains in the world, Kangchenjunga is located in the Himalayas. Mountaineers are both afraid of it and want to conquer it. But it's extremely difficult to do. There's constantly bad weather on Kangchenjunga, as well as frequent avalanches. 22% of climbs end tragically. The mountain is absolutely ruthless. According to climbers, if with the rest of the world's mountains there's a simple rule according to which technological innovations reduce mortality, then technical progress is indifferent for Kangchenjunga. By the way, Kangchenjunga is often called the Mountain Woman, according to Nepalese legend. The mountain hardly accepts men and almost does not tolerate women at all. Although ascents started in the early part of the 20th century, the first woman climbed the peak of Kangchenjunga only in 1998. It was the British Jeanette Harrison. However, she died shortly afterwards while attempting to climb Dhaulagiri Mountain. Here it is, the Nepalese mountain of Dhaulagiri, and its main danger, the summit of Dhaulagiri 1. Its height is 26,794 feet, making Dhaulagiri 1 the 7th highest 8,000er mountain in the world. In Sanskrit, Dhaulagiri translates as White Mountain, but among mountaineers it's known as the Ogre Mountain. Many people who have tried to conquer Dhaulagiri have never returned. Jeanette Harrison was only one of many victims of the mountain. The mortality rate during the ascent is 16%. The main reason for this is the frequent and very strong avalanches. That's why the top of the mountain is conquered even later than Everest. The southern side of Dhaulagiri is considered particularly dangerous. It's completely impregnable and not adapted for climbing, so climbing it is akin to suicide. Only the 8th expedition was successful. Nanga Parbat. Nanga Parbat is one of the 3 most dangerous mountains in the world. About 22% of climbs end tragically. It's estimated that about 400 climbers have lost their lives here. The main difficulties arise about halfway up the ascent. There's a very narrow ridge on the south side of the 15,091 feet high, and to get to the top of the mountain you have to overcome it. In addition, the mountain is very steep. In some places, it takes almost vertical position, so many climbers fall down. Well, and avalanches are another danger, of course. They also significantly complicate the ascent. Eiger. Not all of the dangerous and spooky mountains are in Asia. There are some in Europe as well, but they're much smaller there. And yet, for example, Mount Eiger can easily compete in terms of danger with many 8,000er mountains of the Himalayas. This mountain is located in the Bernese Alps. Its height is just under 13,000 feet, and compared to the Himalayan giants, Eiger's a real crumb. For top climbers, 13,000 feet is a child's height. So what's so dangerous? Despite not being the highest mountain, Eiger is very difficult to conquer. Eiger is first mentioned in documents from the 13th century, but the first time it was climbed was only in 1858. For a long time, no one even attempted to get to the top. It simply seemed impossible. The thing is that in the last part of the route, glaciers and pieces of solid rock rolled down from a 6,560 feet slope to the climbers over and over again. You always have to be on your guard on Eiger. This icy hell can finish off a climber at any second. Bantha Brak. Let's go back to Asia. because this is where the most frightening peaks in the world are located. Another of them is Bantha Brak. This is a pointed and highly rugged peak with complex terrain, which is located in Pakistan. It's known as the most dangerous and difficult peak in Karakoram. The peak is indeed very difficult to conquer. The first successful ascent occurred in 1977, and the next one only did in 2001, 24 years later. The first ascent can by no means be called 100% successful. More precisely, the whole expedition could not be called successful. During the descent, both climbers who had conquered the summit suffered serious fractures and caught pneumonia. It took them a week to get back. The wind and snow whipped them the whole time, and one of the climbers literally dragged himself to the camp on his knees and crawling. Not surprisingly that in the entire history of Bantha Brak, it was conquered only 3 times, and dozens more ascents were unsuccessful. I can't help but talk about Everest. It's the most famous mountain in the world, and at the same time, it's the highest one. You have to overcome as much as 29,028 feet to reach the coveted peak. Despite its incredible height, Everest has been conquered more than 10,000 times. It's conquered regularly. But of course, this doesn't mean that climbing is very easy. Everest is consistently on the list of the most dangerous mountains on the planet. Many climbers freeze to death and permanently remain on the slopes of Everest. Taking their bodies is usually impossible. The most famous Everest monument is the body of the climber in green boots, which has been lying at the altitude of 27,887 feet for 26 years. This gruesome sight eloquently reminds all climbers that the beauty of conquering Everest must be paid for. That's all, guys. Would you like to conquer Everest? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.